So what's going on guys, Kate is here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the best Lost Arks engravings tier list in 2022. So the engraving system in Lost Ark can either way make or break your class and your build. So the big question is, which engravings are the best? So in today's video we will look into all the battle engravings and we will rank them from the best to worst by looking at the classes and how useful they are, how much DPS they actually give to your build and much more. So if this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So then let's move over to the first S tier category, and the only engraving that gets to be in here is the Grudge. So engravings are considered to be one of the most powerful endgame sources of power for your Lost Ark characters. Wide variety of builds need different engravings for each class, but there are a few that appear more frequently, especially on the damage classes. And this Grudge engraving is by far the best and most popular of all of them. Almost every single DPS class uses this engraving, but there is one small thing that you have to know. This engraving you should only use at tier 3 content, and my recommendation is to get this engraving to at least level 2, because at lower levels it's just not that efficient. So overall, if you're looking for the best endgame engraving that will increase your damage up to 20% but will decrease your incoming damage from monsters by the same amount, then this is the one for you. So then let's go over to the A tier, and this time we only have two engravings that are worth to be in here, and it is the Cursed Doll and Adrenaline. So both engravings will increase your damage. The Cursed Doll will increase up to 16% of your attack power by sacrificing 25% healing, and then the Adrenaline will give you plus 15% crit rate, while at the same time you can build up stacks that each stack will increase your damage and much more. So basically the Cursed Doll is very similar to the Grudge, which most damage dealers use, and then the Adrenaline is the best for any type of skill spamming class, or basically any class that has a lot of skills or low cooldowns to use. So that means strikers, gunslingers and etc. So overall, if you're looking for the best second type of engravings that every single DPS class should have, then these are the ones for you. So then let's move over to the next B tier, and we want to put in here Keen Blunt Weapon, Awakening, Raid Captain, Barricade, Expert and Increase Mass. So then in this category we have a bit of mixed engravings for all types of builds. The first three engravings, which are called Keen Blunt Weapon, Awakening and Raid Captain, will primarily be used for a lot of DPS builds. But of course it will all depend on your build and playstyle, because for example the Awakening skill will reduce your Awakening skill's cooldown by 50%. But the big question is it worth it? Every class has different Awakening skills, so if you decide that your Awakening skill is that powerful that you should use one of your engravings to reduce its cooldown, then go for it. Usually where I see this used is for support builds or on the Sophist, because he has the highest damage Awakening skill in the game. So like per usual, it's all up to you. Then for example, moving over to the Keen Blunt Weapon, and this will increase your crit damage but will remove crit rate. So then if your build is very high crit, you can sacrifice a bit of crit rate for increased damage and things like that. And then for the next three engravings we have Barricade, Expert and Increase Mass, and most of these engravings are must have for support builds or different support / warrior class that want to go from support build to more damage or vice versa. So overall I could explain hours upon hours why one engraving is better than the other one, but like most things in Lost Ark, it will all depend on your build and playstyle. So if you ever are wondering what are the best 6 specific engravings for your specific class, then scroll through my channel and you will find a build guide with engraving setup for every single class. So then let's move over to the next C tier, and the next 6 engravings that get to be in here are All Out Attack, Hitmaster, Master Brawler, Master of Ambush, Stabilize Status and Supercharge. All of these engravings are very useful early on, especially in the tier 1 and tier 2 content. If you have seen any of my build guides, you will know that it's important which engraving you get first, especially when you are grinding to tier 3 content. So most of these engravings are a really good choice for the second or third slot. The best thing is that these engravings are very beginner friendly, because despite increasing your damage, they won't give you almost any negatives in return. Or if they do, then they won't be as extreme than the Cursed Doll that decreases your healing, or perhaps Grudge that makes you take 20% more damage and much more. So as you can see, all of these engravings are very new player friendly. So for example, the Master of Ambush will increase your damage up to 25% for successful back attacks, so this will be very useful on dead blades and any other class that primarily focuses on hitting back attacks. Then the Master Brawler will add 25% damage to head attacks, and this goes on and on. If this won't be the best overall engravings tier list, but if I would make specifically a beginner only engravings tier list, then this C tier would definitely be at the top of the list. So overall, if you're looking for really good DPS engravings that won't be extremely punishing and that you can use for early endgame, which is tier 1 and tier 2 content, then these are the best engravings for you. So then moving over to one of the last categories on the list, which is the D tier, and the engravings that get to be in here are Disrespect, Drops of Ether, Ether Predator, Heavy Armor, Master's Tenacity, Precision Dagger, and Spirit Absorption. So most of these engravings are meant for specific builds and playstyles. Almost none of these engravings you will see in all or even most endgame builds, because for example the Master's Tenacity will give you up to 16% damage increase when you are at 50% HP or lower, and most DPS classes don't want to take any damage whatsoever, so not all classes want to use this engraving, or then for example the Heavy Armor engraving will give you 50% defenses or even more. And only tank builds / supports want to use this engraving, because as a damage dealer, which most players are in Lost Ark, they want to deal as much damage as possible, so sacrificing DPS for defenses doesn't sound like a fair trade. So again, I will keep on mentioning this. If any of your engravings that you use are in the D tier, they are still very good and useful, just not for every single build, and they are not that popular as other higher tier engravings. By accumulating points, you reach specific thresholds, which activate the different levels of your engravings and their respective buffs. The 3 different levels can be activated by obtaining 5, 10 and 15 points, and in my testing I factored this as well, so how hard or easy and useful it is to upgrade this engraving and much more. So overall, if you're looking for good engravings that will make some specific builds more fun and useful, then these are the ones for you. So then moving over to the next category, which is the E tier, and we want to put in here the Broken Bone, Crisis Evasion, Explosive Expert, Lightning Fury, Propulsion, Slight Focus, and Vital Point Strike. So this is the last tier before the last one, and here we have a bunch of engravings that I personally only have used for only one of my builds, so that should say a lot. So when I was making my tier list, I had an option to put less popular and not that useful engravings in the last tier, but when I really tested this out, and when I took a look at some specific class setups, these were the last engravings that were decent and a bit better than the lowest tier. So for example, the Vital Point Strike gives you 36% stagger attack effectiveness, or the Broken Bone does 40% damage to stagger foes. Both of these engravings are very unique and will work with only a Berserker or other builds that are very high stagger. By me making this list, I hope that when you are creating your own build, or when you're choosing which engravings to upgrade first, my recommendation is to use anything from the S tier till the D tier, and if you are in the tier 3 content, then prioritize in the same way from the highest ranked engraving to the lowest. But with all this said, if you really know what you're doing and you need to use any of these engravings in the E tier, then be very careful, but I definitely do not recommend it. So then moving over to the last and final category, which is the F tier, and here we want to include all of the rest engravings, so Contender, Crushing Fist, Divine Protection, and etc. So all of these engravings that are in this category are not bad whatsoever, they are just not that useful for most builds, and most of these engravings only are used for specific builds and playstyles. One of my biggest reasons why I play Lost Ark so much is the different builds you can make, so I definitely like a lot that we have different engravings to use. So we have options to change or boost our build, but if we just take a look at the damage numbers themselves, or how many builds actually use any of these engravings, it will be a very low number if we compare them to other tiers. So that's why these engravings are in this last F category. So the way I determined which engraving should be in which category, I looked up at how much actual DPS you get, then how worth it is, so is it easy to go from level 1 to level 3, then how popular and useful the engraving is, so how many builds actually use it, and then lastly I took a look at the actual engravings itself and if there is a better and cheaper option for that specific engraving. So then from 10 out of 10 scale for each category, I got my numbers, and then at the end I summarized all of them together, and by this final number I made different tiers in this list itself, and this is how I decided which engravings goes where, and that's about it. So I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback, or other good Lost Ark tier lists or guides that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe, and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you won't miss any more amazing content from me. With all this said, you have an amazing day and I'll catch you in the next one. So take it easy, peace. Yo, I ain't here for